welcome you into the show. And Adam Schefter is with us now. Now, Shefty, this season will have international games, the most ever. Why is the league putting such an emphasis on this and just this global reach to all these different fans?
Laura, it knows that international is the future. It wants to grow the brand, grow the game as much as it can overseas in these foreign areas, and the league knows that there's untapped revenue in those markets that can be had for the NFL, and so you're going to see all these games played there this year, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. The trend seems to be for an increasing number of international games. That is expected to continue to be the case in the future as the league looks to expand to an 18-game season that eventually could include one game per season for every NFL team. I've heard people talk down the line, way down the line, about a potential international division way in the future. We'll see if that ever comes to be, but there's a lot of talk about international expansion. You're seeing it this year, and that's going to have a direct correlation to the amount of miles that some teams do and don't fly. You look at the 49ers this year. They're going to lead the league in air miles with that opening game in Australia. They're going to fly more miles this year than everybody else. The Rams right behind them, the Texans, Cowboys, Patriots not far behind them. And at the other end of the spectrum, of course, would be a team like the Carolina Panthers that will fly under 10,000 miles this year. Travel's hard. Travel takes a toll. It's just one more obstacle that those teams that will log a lot of air miles will have to overcome this season.
Yeah, Adam, it's a good point. I mean, it's kind of the other side of all this. There's a lot of excitement around the international slate, but there is the whole side of it from the team standpoint. Entering 2026, by the way, there's been 62 regular season games outside the U.S. Now, as for exactly how these teams feel about it, though, let's talk a little bit more about the 49ers specifically. They play in 2 international games this season. They'll open the season in Melbourne, Australia, a mere 7,865 miles from San Francisco to take on the division rival Rams. But they'll also play the final international game of the season in Week 11, taking on the Vikings in Mexico City, the third time San Fran has played in Mexico City. 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan shared his excitement for playing 2 international games earlier this offseason at the league's annual meetings.
I was so fired up. That was our goal, to go 19 hours away to play a game. So I think we're going back in time or into the future. I think we gain a day or lose a day. I'm not sure which one yet, but it is what it is. We'll deal with it. And I think there's 8 international games. We got 2 of them, so we're fired up about that.
Yeah, I mean, tongue firmly planted in cheek on the excitement I was alluding to there from Kyle Shanahan, Booger McFarland, Louis Riddick, also with us today. Look, when you think about what the Niners are going to have to deal with the 2 international games, do you have any concerns for San Fran heading into this season, just knowing some of the maybe potential schedule challenges they'll face?
Yeah, travel is always tough, and I get it, especially when you add that Australia trip in there. I'm not necessarily concerned about that. Like, every team's got to get on the plane, and these guys aren't exactly flying on Southwest planes. That's number one. I think the biggest thing for the 49ers has got to be, can they stay healthy? Like, it seems every year this team gets their stars banged up more and more, whether it's Nick Bosa, whether it's Fred Warner, Ricky Pearsall. Kyle Shanahan did Coach of the Year honors last year as far as the work he did on the field. But at some point, you would love to see him have a full roster with his entire complement of players with that Coach of the Year resume that he has. I think from an offensive standpoint, you saw where they drafted Deshaun Stribling. They're going to try to become more explosive in the passing game. But they got to get guys to stay healthy. And I know that's not an X and O deal, but if you get this team to stay healthy, with everything that Kyle Shanahan can do and how Brock Purdy can play, this team will be in the postseason. And that's what every team is trying to do.
Look, I recently flew Southwest. I enjoyed it, okay? So I don't know about what you're talking about, but either way, Louis, they made an emphasis on the receiver position this offseason. They added Mike Evans. Where's your confidence in the 49ers, knowing specific moves they've made, and do you think they still need to do more?
I have a lot of confidence in the moves that they made. I think, as Boog touched on, San Francisco's issue has always been about keeping the guys that they acquire or that they draft available and keeping them on the field for 16 or now 17 games. I mean, you like what they did at wide receiver. And, adding a Mike Evans to go along with Deshaun Stribling, to go along with the holdover in Ricky Pearsall, with a healthy George Kittle, with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, a drafted Keelan Black from Indiana, that's pretty darn good. That's a good group of people right there. You re-sign, Trent Williams. You assume that Brock is going to stay healthy. He continues to master this offense. That's a nice group of guys right there. I don't care how many miles that you're traveling. And on the defensive side, look, Nick Bosa needs to stay healthy. They need to keep Michael Williams healthy. Fred Warner needs to stay healthy. They draft Romello Height out of Texas Tech, a nice edge piece to go along with Nick Bosa. Look, there's a lot of things to be optimistic about on paper with San Francisco. The question is, whoever opens week 1, how long are they going to stay available as the season goes on?
Yeah, that was the issue last year, to your point. You guys, that's not all from San Fran, okay? I want to take notice of this. 49ers tight end George Kittle tweeted this morning about an eventful early morning. At 4 a.m., he said, "This morning, as I laid in a deep slumber, I was called to action by my wife, who had discovered a spider the size of a $50 in the bathroom without hesitation." Oh, there's the spider. Oh, my goodness. I didn't know that was going to happen. That kind of freaked me out. He says, "I arose to combat the intruder. Claire handed me the slant board I've been using for rehab, and I immediately knew the spider had no chance. It took but one attempt to strike down my opponent. I received hugs and kisses for my bravery and fell back asleep with confidence. Have a great day, gentlemen." Shefty, seems like the status of the spider in Kittle's house is doubtful. Any updates, though, on Kittle's recovery from his torn Achilles?
Well, Laura, not all heroes wear capes, and that was a bold, brave act by George Kittle this morning to take care of that spider for his wife, Claire. We salute him for his efforts. And yes, he is on track right now to get back for the upcoming season, assuming that there are no substations outside in Australia that prevent him or set him back any further from coming back from that torn Achilles that he suffered here in January. The hope is that he'll be ready for the start of the season. He's a warrior. We'll see if he can make it back in time, but they're counting on getting him back as soon as possible. Doesn't help to have the early game early in the season, but that's what the 49ers now have to deal with. But at least he's in training. He got some sleep here before he had to kill the spider. Now we'll see if the spiders, any other spiders, re-emerge on the Kittle household, and he has to take care of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I hope that was the last one. Hopefully, he just eliminated that. Oh, my God. Do it one more time. I just want to look at that spider again. Can we do it again? Ah!
George, where's George when we need him?
Where's your
If I see a
slant board
spider if I see a spider that big in my house, I'm running out.
Taking it down. All right. Yeah, I've smacked a few in my day. Okay, how about this? Let's talk about the Jags a little bit more as we continue on with our international slate that's been announced. The Jags seem to be London's adopted franchise. Adam, there have been some notable changes in Duval County, most notably the departure of running back Travis Etienne. How's Jacksonville feeling about filling that spot this season?
Listen, I think they're expecting Bashal Tutin, the rookie running back from last year, to step up, and they went out during the offseason and signed Chris Rodriguez, the free agent running back formerly of the Washington Commanders. And I think that they feel like those backs can help overcome the loss of Travis Etienne, who signed with the New Orleans Saints. Of course, they have LaQuint Allen Jr., a pass catcher as well. So there are a combination of backs. And the Jaguars have made a lot of good moves. They've essentially called out the right numbers here, and James Gladstone, the general manager, Liam Cohn, the head coach, Grant Udinski, the offensive coordinator. This is an organization that last year was ascending. It figures to continue to ascend here in the future, but they're just going to have to do it without a running back who was a key cog in that offense last season.
Yeah, Boog, when you think about the Jags, it feels like Trevor Lawrence showed us what could be possible last season, getting in partnership with Liam Cohen, right? And you see what they were able to create. How can he continue to build on some of that momentum and really continue to live up to the expectations that I think we all kind of had from him when he was the #1 overall draft pick?
No doubt. And when he was a #1 overall draft pick, we talked about being a generational talent. We kid and call him the nickname Sunshine, but he's 6'5", 240 pounds. He can run. He's super athletic. But I feel like the biggest thing that's missing is the consistency. Can you be consistent week in and week out? And then when the games matter the most, when all the chips on the table, you got to show up and play. Like, that's what we laud Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, because more times than not, when the game is on the line, those quarterbacks make plays. Trevor Lawrence has got to get to the point where when he puts his team in a position consistently, can he show up and make those plays? That's the thing that's missing. We see the generational talent. We just don't see it enough, Laura, and I think that's the thing that he and Liam Cohen have to continue to work on, the consistency, week in and week out. It's not necessarily about the splash plays. It's about the consistency of having above-average quarterback play. That's what they're missing in Jacksonville.
Yeah, you did see the influence of Cohen on him, though. I mean, better decision-making in a lot of ways, especially in the red zone. That had been an issue before. Now, Lewis, there was some scrutiny on the Jags draft. Is it warranted?
Yeah, I think it is if you're someone who really likes to nitpick, you know, the whole concept centered around value. And look, with their first 3 picks, the first 2 in particular, when you think about Nate Borkature, the tight end out of Texas A&M, Albert Regis, the defensive tackle out of A&M, those are 2 guys that, quite honestly, for me, when I watch them, I don't care what consensus says. I don't get into all that. But these guys weren't the kind of impact players that I would have expected to go that high in the draft. Jacksonville obviously sees it different. Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard out of Oregon, nice player now. That is a guy, Tanner Koziol, who they got in the 5th out of Houston. I liked him more than Borkature. So look, we all know that player personnel evaluation is very subjective. We're going to see whether Jacksonville can get the kind of value out of them that they expect. But right now, it's up in the air.
All right, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and say I apologize on behalf of our show here. I'm getting a few tweets. People were a little freaked out by the spider that went across the screen. People are in their living rooms jumping off their couches. On behalf of NFL Live, I'm issuing an apology for that. But I'm actually not sorry, because that's funny. If you some sound around the league this week, let's start in New York, where recently paid Jets running back Breece Hall had some high praise for himself this upcoming season.
I'm the only running back that's consistently a top 10 back in the league that's not in that hasn't in the past been in always in the most ideal situation. So I feel like now, AG and Mooj, like, I feel like they really put me in position with all the guys we brought in and the team we're building around us to really flourish and for me to really be myself. So everything goes as planned. I feel like this could be my best season for sure.
Well, you agree with Hall?
I completely agree. First of all, way to give yourself flowers, Hall. If nobody's going to give you flowers, give yourself some flowers. That's number one. Number two, I love the physicality of this offensive line. And what can Breece Hall do? He can run with power. We know he's got speed. And now you add in with this offensive line, with the tight ends that they have, they're going to be physical and run the football. And Breece Hall is going to get his opportunity to back those words up of him being not just the top 10 back. He may be creeping toward top 5 or 7 running back in the National Football League.
He was standing on business. All right, let's stay in the AFC East. New Patriots safety Kevin Byard was asked Tuesday if he's talked to his former teammate A.J. Brown about potentially playing in New England. I love that he was asked this. Let's listen to it first.
No, we honestly haven't talked about it directly. And I don't know what's the situation there. I hope it can work. I hope he can come here and play for us, but that remains to be seen. I'm just trying to get to know the guys that we have here. From Rome to Pop and all these other guys that we have here. So, but if we're able to get AJ, obviously he's an incredible talent, somebody I play with. He's a true #1 receiver in this league. So that'd be awesome to pair up with him again.
Kevin, you are working out with this friend in the off season. It's kind of, I don't want to call anybody a liar, Lewis, but do you believe that he really has not talked to AJ Brown about potentially becoming a Patriot?
I'm going to allow my non-answer to be my answer. Okay?
Thank you.
Let's just put it that way. Of course, I mean, come on now. I mean, he understands what AJ brings to the table. Look, all the guys in the NFL, it's a big, giant fraternity. Some guys you have real great relationships with. AJ is a premium #1 that takes New England's offense from here to here. And that's someone that any GM would be trying desperately to go ahead and pull off that kind of trade, as I'm sure Elliott Wolf is trying to do in New England.
Yeah, by the way, Kevin, shout out for a great way of handling that answer. We're just giving you some crap. To Baltimore, where Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman spoke on Get Up this week about his expectations for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens.
The expectations are what they've been. I mean, you expect Lamar to be in the MVP conversation. You expect the Ravens to be right there at the end of the day, which they typically have been. When you are a veteran quarterback, franchise quarterback, and you've had the years that Lamar has had, now the coach leaves, you got a young coach, first-time coach coming in, that puts a lot on the plate of the quarterback. So the expectations certainly are going to be higher for him. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but I don't think anything changes.
Adam, how would you describe the expectations on Lamar?
Well, here's the interesting thing, Laura. Lamar Jackson has been a full participant in the offseason program so far. That hasn't happened in the past. So it certainly feels like he's rededicating himself. There's obviously a new offensive coordinator in Declan Doyle. There's a new head coach in Jesse Minter. There's a new culture there in Baltimore. And it feels like Lamar Jackson has reacted very favorably to that. He has not shown up and participated in prior offseason programs. The fact that he's there right now and has been a full participant, I think, lends itself to him having a big season this upcoming year.
Yeah, it's a good for sure, and we'll wait and see exactly what the Ravens' schedule looks like as our schedule release show comes your way on Thursday. We're going to know a lot more about it. Get to we look back at the Week 16 Thursday night matchup between the Rams and Seahawks, and boy, this one was good.
Both teams are 11-3. The winner, according to our analytics, is in the driver's spot to earn the 1 seed in the NFC.
Here's a handoff to Walker now. He breaks it outside 50. He's down in 40. He's on the run. Touchdown! Seahawks!
Touchdown, Blake Corum. Stafford's going to throw. It's caught. It's Puka. It's a Rams touchdown.
Starts up the middle. Now he has a gap on the left side 40. Turns upfield. There he goes. Holy catfish. Touchdown! Seahawks! Fires backside. Wide open. Reaching up. Touchdown! Seahawks! Barner in the end zone. And he had to leap.
Caught. Puka at the 10. Puka touchdown.
Throws back in the end zone. Touchdown! Jackson, Smith, and Jigba.
Control of the West. Control of the conference. To be decided on this 2-point try.
Darnold has time. It's caught! Holy cow! The Seahawks win the game again on the last play of the game.
Wow. Okay, the Seahawks and Rams played 3 times last season, including the NFC Championship, with the home team winning all 3. Now, all games were decided by 4 or fewer points, with Seattle having an 88-85 advantage. So close, though, right? The Rams led for more time than the Seahawks in those games. So, Louis, Seattle coming off winning a Super Bowl. Do you like what they've done to address their roster this offseason?
Yeah, I do, because there wasn't a whole lot that they really needed to do. They really, first and foremost, they wanted to retain their own guys, right? So offensively, they re-signed Rashid Shaheed, and then they give JSN a huge extension. I mean, those are big moves right there. Right there, they retain 2 guys who are just dynamic playmakers for him. So then you move to the running back position, right? They let Kenneth Walker go. They draft Jadarian Price out of Notre Dame late in the first round, which you sit there and you go, could they have really just upgraded at running back? They could have gotten younger, maybe even more explosive, maybe even more dynamic at running back. And then on defense, their front seven's already stocked. It's already loaded. They lose Boye Mafe, who goes to Cincinnati, but they're still loaded. They still have a lot of guys up front that they can send at you in waves in terms of pass rush and being real diverse up front. But the kicker to me is really what they did in the secondary. I want people to remember this name. Remember the name Bud Clark, their safety that they drafted out of TCU in the second round. This kid who had 15 interceptions in his college career. This dude, him and Devin Witherspoon and Emmanuel Imenwari are going to be absolute hell on wheels for every offense that tries to put the ball in the air. I promise you. Because Bud Clark can play anywhere. Free safety, strong safety, nickel, dime, and he's a turnover machine. I think they've gotten better. I think they're going to be better in 2026.
Man, that's scary for a lot of people. I mean, Shefty, Seattle remains one of the big questions for the schedule release, right? Any idea who they might be playing in the season opener?
Well, a couple of points there on Lewis, first of all, Laura. Bud Clark signed today. And Jadarian Price, I remember talking to one coach who said he thought Jadarian Price was the best running back in the draft. Running back. I know Jeremiah Love is the weapon, but he felt like Jadarian Price was the best running back in the draft. Now, as for who they're going to play in the opener, it really feels like it's down to 2 teams. The 2 candidates that the NFL has chosen from seem to be the New England Patriots and the Chicago Bears. And we'll find out tomorrow exactly who that Week 1 matchup will be against. If it's the Patriots, the first game of the 2026 season would be the same game as the last game of last season, a rematch of the Super Bowl. Obviously, we know the Bears would be a huge matchup in that particular situation. 2 attractive matchups, whichever one it is. Everybody would be fired up to see whoever it is that has to make that trip to Seattle to play that Wednesday night, the Wednesday night before The Rams and 49ers square off in Australia on Thursday night, 24 hours later.
Yeah, the old Wednesday nighter. By the way, reminder, schedule release show tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN as well as NFL Network. Boog, that Seattle defense was a big reason for their Super Bowl run. When you look at how it will look, especially with the additions that Lewis is talking about in the draft, what are your expectations?
By the way, to comment on Schefter's point, the NFL should do us all a favor and allow the Patriots to open up against the Seahawks. I think we all would love that one for a number of reasons. As far as this Seattle defense, you know, we interviewed Mike McDonald post-game in the Super Bowl, and we talked to him about his defense. And the biggest key to this defense is they play the run with a light box. They keep both their safeties back. And so when you look at how this defense plays, until someone can run them out of that defense, this defense is going to be the same. The key to that defense is Leonard Williams because he allows them to keep both of those safeties back. They can play the run essentially a half a man short. And as long as they can do that, we talked about this front seven. We know what the linebackers are like, the secondary, the scheme. The scheme is one of the best schemes in the National Football League. Mike McDonald does an outstanding job. And until somebody can get them out of that too high safety shell and make them bring a safety down, this defense is going to continue to dominate and be as good as advertised.
Yeah, they called themselves the dark side. They didn't want to be the Legion of Boom, even though some of the numbers were similar. They weren't trying to be compared to that great defense, but the dark side had a lot to write home about. I wonder if they'll get a new name this year. Okay, so we saw Seattle on the one side of that game from last season. How about the Rams? After a loss to the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, the Rams will try to run it back with Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams this season. They did draft the heir apparent to Stafford in Ty Simpson, taking him 13th overall. He'll be working with Nate Scheelhaus, who was promoted to offensive coordinator after Mike LaFleur was hired as Arizona's head coach. Adam, one of the more notable moves this offseason was the Rams drafting Ty Simpson 13th overall. How do you see the relationship between Stafford and Simpson playing out?
Well, Matthew Stafford is going to be a great mentor to Ty Simpson, but if we're being honest, Matthew Stafford could not have been overly happy that that was the selection that this team made with its first-round pick when it already had traded for Trent McDuffie. This is a team that might just be the best team in all of football. They're looking to win the Super Bowl on their home field again this season. That would be the hope and goal. Ty Simpson, in all probability, does not help them with that goal this season. And so Matthew Stafford, who is in the back part of his career, obviously would like to see a wide receiver like a Mekhi Lemon come into Los Angeles. Instead, it's his potential successor one day, which doesn't do a lot to help him and them this season. Can't imagine he was overly thrilled about it, but he understands the long-term picture and what this franchise is thinking.
Yeah, you still wonder if they would add a receiver at some point. We'll see. LA has done some things this offseason. Boog, do you like what they've done to help out Stafford and company?
Well, to help out Stafford and company, I think they helped their defense out because that was the Achilles heel toward the end of last season when you look at their secondary. Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie. It's amazing the best moves they made were prior to the draft because I think those two corners is going to reshape that secondary. The Ty Simpson move didn't help them at all. The relationship between he and Stafford should be non-existent because Ty Simpson is going to sit the bench and Stafford's got to go out and try to be an MVP and win the Super Bowl. Who cares about the relationship? But as far as what they did to this defense, if they can continue to get those guys, Byron Young and Verse and Fist, those guys have to come alive and continue to rush the passer. If McDuffie and Watson are as advertised, this is the way that they've helped Matthew Stafford because they will get the ball back to this offense.
Yeah, Lewis, when you think about that, I mean, just the talent of McDuffie and Watson, like Boog is talking about, is that enough to make it? I mean, they're not just trying to win and get to the postseason. Like, they're trying to win a Super Bowl. Does that make them a legitimate, bona fide Super Bowl contender?
No doubt. Absolutely no doubt. Think back to the NFC Championship game last year. Who couldn't they slow down? They couldn't slow down JSN. They couldn't stop Jackson Smith and Jigba. And they threw the football, Seattle threw the football for almost 350 yards in that game. And we saw it play out like that time and time again during the regular season where the cornerback play just wasn't up to par. And so making an aggressive move and trading for Trent and then signing Jalen as an unrestricted free agent, that is huge. Look, they still did add some people in the draft on the offensive side, when you think about the drafting of Keegan Trost, offensive tackle out of Missouri, C.J. Daniels, the wide receiver out of Miami. I know these guys are down the line third-day additions to this football team that people go, well, that's not really helping Stafford. But the offensive line did need depth. They needed some help. They needed somebody to really challenge the start at right tackle. Trost will do that. And C.J. Daniels, look, this is a guy who is tough as heck, who's big, rangy, likes to block. Isn't that exactly what Sean McVay likes in his wide receivers? So I think don't discount those additions also.
Yeah, it's a good point. They added some depth there for sure in the later rounds. People probably are not giving enough credit to. Thanks to Lewis for reminding us. New on NFL Live. We've got another game announced involving the Rams. The first Thanksgiving Eve NFL matchup. The Packers and Rams on the Wednesday night before the Thanksgiving on Netflix. I promise there's still going to be some games that haven't been released by the time we get to tomorrow night, our schedule release show. But either way, that's going to be a great one. Let's get to some more top stories around the NFL with Adam Schefter. Shefty, kick us off with the latest on Aaron Rodgers' future in Pittsburgh.
Well, Laura, 1 week after we read about Aaron Rodgers supposedly showing up in Pittsburgh, he still has yet to show up at the team facility. There's still no contract agreement in place between Rodgers and the Steelers. However, let's keep in mind the Steelers have their offseason workout program, or their OTAs, beginning on Monday. We'll see if Rodgers shows up in time and they can figure out a contract to get that done by the time Monday begins. Meanwhile, Michael Penix, who tore his ACL 6 months ago, is back on the field throwing. He still feels like he'll be back in time for week 1. The Falcons are being careful and cautious with him. We know they went out this offseason and landed Tua Tagovailoa, but it's a situation where Penix believes he should be back in time for week 1. And earlier today, as you mentioned, we saw the NFL announce all its international games. Look at all those matchups being played in London and Paris and Australia and Mexico City. They go from week 1 all the way until late November, when the Vikings and 49ers travel to Mexico City. A big slate of international games, the biggest slate the NFL has ever had, and it's probably a sign of things to come in the future.
Adam, real fast, which of those cities would you really like to go to? If you're going to pick one.
Laura, Paris would be fine by me. If they wanted to send us all to Paris for the weekend to go cover that particular matchup, Saints and Steelers, like the first ever game in Paris, we're down for that. If they want to send us there, that'd be great.
Yeah, if anybody's listening, any of our bosses, we love you. We appreciate you for our jobs, and we'd love to go to Paris. All right, still to come. Joe Burrow takes his fashion at... Hey, the full international slate of games is out, and one of the notables is the Falcons and Bengals facing off in the NFL's second ever matchup in Madrid, Spain. We got special music for this one. I love it. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor was asked Tuesday if he thinks his quarterback looks any different heading into this year's offseason program.
He looks good. That's about as far as I can go with it. He looks like he's in great shape, ready to go. I know that his mindset is, he's excited to have a great year. He's put in a lot of work, and but he also knows the same things I'm saying here. We still got, a month and a half left to get after it as a team and see where we can push this team before we come back for training camp.
All right, over the last 5 seasons, Joe Burrow has missed 17 games for the Bengals, and they've gone 5-12 in those games. That's compared to a 41-26 mark with him in the lineup and about 4 more points per game. Burrow has missed 16 games over the last 3 seasons after leading the Bengals to back-to-back AFC Championship game appearances. Certainly when he's on the field, you see how much of a difference he makes. Boog, it looks like Burrow is going to be getting a full offseason, though, without heavy rehab for the first time in a long time. What are your expectations for this team starting the year actually with a healthy Joe Burrow?
Well, the expectation is to get in the playoffs. And if they get in the playoffs healthy with Joe Burrow, then I think at that point, you got to give them just as good an opportunity as anybody of advancing. Offense hasn't been the problem. Health withstanding, I think the offense is going to be just fine with those receivers, how they throw the football around. Yeah, they got to run the football a little bit better. Let's be honest, though. The Bengals' season is going to be determined by 2 things. Dexter Lawrence, I think, and Shamar Stewart. Can Dexter Lawrence regain the form when he was the most dominant defensive tackle in football 2 years ago? That's number 1. And number 2, can Shamar Stewart take the next step? We all saw the freakish athletic ability he had coming out of A&M that made him a first-round pick. If they can get those 2 defensive linemen to dominate, that will help this defense out. And in actuality, that'll be the biggest, I think, the biggest help Joe Burrow can get is a defense to give him the football back. Health withstanding, the offense is going to be good. Cincinnati's age-old problem is defensively. They got to be able to stop somebody at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Boog brings this up. Adam, does it finally feel like this is the year where we're going to turn this trend around and this Bengals defense is going to step up enough? It doesn't even have to be that much better, but enough to where the offense can actually succeed in winning these games.
Laura, I think there have been a lot of people that have discussed the Dallas Cowboys offseason and how Dallas has put a lot of resources into the defensive side of the football. The Bengals are the Cowboys AFC version. That is what they've done. If you go and look at what this team has done this offseason, there were 6 veteran free agent acquisitions. There also were 2 high draft picks. That's 8 players who legitimately could impact the defensive side of the football. It could be an entirely new look defense for the Cincinnati Bengals, and everybody across the league knows that the defense was the Achilles heel here in Cincinnati. The offense is not the question. It's not the issue. We all know what that offense with Joe Burrow at quarterback, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, we know what they're going to do. We don't know about the defense, and that's why this team went out and allocated all the resources, money, and picks that it did to the defensive side of the football, where it looks like that entire unit essentially has been overhauled.
Yeah, Lewis, it feels like more of a desperate approach in a good way, right? That this team is finally saying, yeah, we got to do something about this defense, and especially knowing you've got a talented quarterback like Joe Burrow, you have the great receivers. What are the realistic expectations for this team? I mean, can they be Super Bowl caliber? Are they close enough to that, or is it a tier below?
Yeah, I think the floor for Cincinnati has to be inclusion in the playoffs. Otherwise, I think you see big wholesale changes there. And it may start with the quarterback going, I'm the hell out of here. Because, look, if you cannot get into the postseason with these kind of changes, with the quality of players that they have added, then I don't know if it's not just a player personnel issue. It's a philosophical issue. It's a execution issue in terms of maybe game planning and play calling. A lot of stuff, if they don't make it into the playoffs, is going to be evaluated, and Cincinnati's going to look much different in 2027 if they don't play, in the postseason. Like I said, look, I'm with Boog. The defense in particular up front, the front players that they have added. But guys like, Cassius Howell has to be a big-time hit for them as a pass rusher. So does Boye Mafe as a free agent acquisition. There's a name on that list right there, second from the bottom in the left-hand column, Brian Cook, the safety who comes over from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the guy who has to really set the tone right in the middle, smack in the middle of that defense, to not give big plays, have solid communication in the back end. He has to carry out defensive coordinator Al Golden's directive. There's so much stuff, man. So much stuff that they need to get done. Otherwise, like I said, Cincy's going to look different in 27 if they don't.
Yeah, it does feel like it's kind of coming to a head this season, and they have made some moves with that in mind, but we'll keep an eye on it. All right,